Chapter 11, Metanova, GTD 128-12-7310-0.7. The sound was at once an enveloping blanket of thunder, and yet soothing and restful. He opened his eyes. Blue-gray sky met green-gray ocean at the flat demarcation line that stretched to infinity in three directions, the horizon. He closed his eyes. The rumble of the surf, the waves crashing, the coast's timeless lullaby as the cradle rocked, relaxed him. The gentle breeze grew and became an overwhelming and transforming wind that carried him out to sea. And now he was alone, and the infinity went out in all directions on the surface of the water. Suddenly he fell off his raft into the ocean. The ocean mind game was over. His partner Salena had pushed him from behind into a wave. "That's what you get for drifting off," Salena said with a mischievous laugh. Eldon reacted first by looking at his wet pants and then turning and running toward Salena. He tried to catch her without success. Such innocent play was the main activity of this couple on this rare day at an Earth beach. They enjoyed it just as anyone else there at this open Ivy beach, where tourists from at least 7 star systems may visit. One group of beach visitors seemed to be having great fun. Small round blobs, the children, were tossed out into the surf one by the large stationary mother blob. They would bob up and down in the water and then make their way back to the mother to be picked up by one of her 8 tentacles and tossed out again. This was what octartians from Mars liked to do. They were just regular visitors from the local area. As Salena and Eldon walked along the beach hand in hand, they talked. "This day should last forever," Salena wished. "Just think of us here whenever you see the ocean or sand," Eldon mused. "I will keep it in my treasure of special days," Salena said happily. Then she said, "Every IB should have a place like this to go." "I agree, but Earth is one of the few places that has these conditions." "I know. My planet Valeniez has only a few small seas that are too dangerous to get near. This place is so peaceful and gentle in comparison." Eldon stopped to pick up a small shell. Looking at the shell, he said, "Many have decided to remain here for their final years. That is why Earth has more people aged 300 plus years than any planet in the sector." Then he tossed the shell out to the waves. "Earth is a great place to settle down," Salena said in a positive tone. Looking at Eldon, she asked, "What do you think?" Eldon chuckled. "Of course it's Stopping, he stood and looked into Salena's face with a sort of puzzled expression. She was smiling as he said, "That won't be for a couple of centuries yet." "I know, Eldon. I don't want to settle down either. I just can't see myself stuck on a planet raising little ones, even for only 30 years or so, not yet anyway. I like being a sing-sword too much." She paused and saw some seabirds take flight, then said, "But if I did want to settle down, Earth would be the place." "I'm glad you feel the same way I do, Salena. Some would say we have plenty of time to do what we want, but time has a way of jumping ahead, and unexpectedly." They now walked to the edge of the water and faced the ocean. "Do you ever wonder who we really are, Salena?" "What do you mean?" "A person's family, name, background defines who he is. Also his home and all his experiences shape his personality." "Isn't it also your decisions you make in life?" Salena added. "Exactly. And we have decided to seek the singular source as sing-swords. We traverse the known galaxy and beyond on a regular basis. We come in contact with life forms and wonders that most cannot even imagine in their lifetime. Sometimes we even join to or become the life forms, the IBs, for a time to help them. If you are not careful, you could begin to think you are more than IB, that you are superior, like a so-called god. Only the Creator allows us to be a part of that, and we have to come home, like today. We have a home base that grounds us. But you better answer that important call." Immediately after she said that, Eldon's comm pod alerted. It was about a ship being ready for them tomorrow. Salena still had her extrasensory abilities, like knowing a call is coming before it alerts. Eldon was not surprised at all because her extra sight had become an ordinary occurrence. Yes, Salena, you are right, but sometimes it is like we are some kind of super chameleons, and it makes me wonder who we really are when we have a seemingly endless diversity making us up. Salena put her arm round Eldon, and looking over the waves, she said, "We are children of the Creator." Satisfied with that, Eldon said, "Yes, so we better get ready for our flight tomorrow." He turned and started to walk away from the ocean. After several steps, he turned around to look for Salena, but she was nowhere in sight. He quickly walked back to the water. Then Salena emerged from a wave, came to Eldon, and said, "I'm ready to go now." In the far reaches of Deberon lay Elemas, a very special star. Nearly 1,000 parsecs from Earth, they were now on the other side of the galaxy. A significant distance, with no light purpose, was this voyage. It was not an official mission under the power of the SS Dome, but still important. Eldon and Salena, as a team, were chosen to voluntarily go as observers of a rare stellar event. The Sinksor Travelers Association was the agency that chose them and provided the GL-class ship, one of 20, to observe the event. The event, for lack of a better term, was called Metanova. It was said that this means a star that dies and is immediately replaced by another star from another dimension. Such an event is so rare that it may happen once in a billion Earth years. The only way that a handful of Ibis learned about this was from the Celestions, as they are known to us. They are the highest form of life or entities known in the universe. We do not call them Ibis because they are so far beyond that. Their existence is not material but pure energy. They are not limited by laws of the material universe. Time, distance, and the known dimensions do not apply to them. They have been known to communicate with a few select Ibis to guide them, as it were. It is analogous to adults guiding children. The Celestians could no doubt reveal much about the source if they wanted to. The only thing they have said about the source to their IB contacts is that they are not our creators, but that the source created them long before us. A so-called metanova is far more rare than a supernova. Hence, no IB had ever seen one that we know of. We were given almost no information about it except the basic idea of what is to happen, the location, the galactic date, and that it would take a few solar days. There was a mention of some unusual effects that could not be fully understood by the IB contacts. It was decided that a safe distance to observe would be a light day, that is, the distance light could travel in a solar day, which is approximately 30 billion kilometers, or the width of 18 small solar systems. The 20 ships had taken their positions and were preparing for the event. Eldon and Salena's ship was the only one from Earth. All were ready to report their observations to a central database. Some were tied in with each other through universal translators. Some also took extra precautions with shielding and escape plans. They all waited with full attention and expectation of something new and unique. Several hours passed with no discernible change in the star Elemas. Part of the conversation by the team in the Earth ship went this way. "We are greatly privileged to be chosen to observe this event," Eldon stated resolutely. "I'm glad we could see it together," Salena responded. "But something should be happening by now, right?" Eldon looked closely at his panels as he answered. "Yes, I think soon, because surface temps have risen. The last nuclear fuel of LE mass is being spent. It should supernova any time now." "Why do you think the Celestians told us about this?" Salena asked. "They want us to learn something, I suppose. They are like tour guides of time and space." Then in a skeptical tone, Salena speculated, I wonder. They are so mysterious. Maybe they just want to observe us, like in some kind of test." They probably have, many times. If so, there is nothing we could do about it. But I don't think they are malevolent. They could have destroyed us any time. I have a bad feeling, Salena admitted now. Her extra sense was getting a warning. Eldon knew to take her feelings and premonitions seriously. Do you feel that something bad will happen? He asked. I don't know. I have never felt like this before. She thought a moment and asked, This has never happened before, so we don't know what to expect, do we? We expect a very bright light and then a view of a new star. But I must admit I don't like the reference to unusual effects that was not explained. Within an hour later, a beep alarm sounded. Eldon turned to see what it was. Energy levels spiking across the board. This is it. Light shields up. The star Elemas got brighter by the second. This is what they were waiting for. From this point on, the light intensified rapidly. It was a spectacular supernova, the first part of the Metanova, the final hours of a star, saying goodbye in a great burnout, to be seen for thousands of light years. As the light gradually lessened, it was no less amazing. Finally, the outline of a new star could be seen in the same space. This one was different. A totally new star had boldly entered our space from another dimension. A normal supernova would leave a dark shell, a dead star. This was a bright, new star glowing with a greenish light and getting brighter by the hour. The Metanova had occurred just as the Celestians had said. This awesome event was completed within a period of about 20 solar hours. During this whole event, the majority of observers did not notice any unusual effects. There were only a few that did notice. Some of the observers, in 3 ships, were transformed momentarily at the beginning of the Metanova. They winked out of our space for no more than a second of time in this space. The others, being fixed on the exploding star, did not see that happen to them. But in that instant, they had been changed forever. One of those ships was the one from Earth. The following is a feeble attempt at describing what Eldon experienced in that instant. Mere words of his language are inadequate to convey it, since this place or experience is totally new and untouched territory. His first feeling at the start of the supernova was that this was an event from the past that he was reliving. When the Metanova reached its peak brightness, Eldon knew something strange had happened to him, because he could now see the exploding star from all angles at once, something impossible for an IB. He was no longer in the ship, but had a higher, superior vantage point, if you will. Then he knew that somehow he had been transferred to a place outside of time and space. All the light from the Metanova washed over him. No longer Eldon, but a new star child privileged to see this, was born, and feeling the light as part of him, since he was light now. He was on an interstellar pendulum, swinging through the old Nova star and into the new one, then back out. Each swing of the pendulum being several 100 million years. He could count every pulse, see how they are made up of radiated beams, and see how the beams are generated by nuclear reactions throughout the star's life of aeons. The child swinging in time, a dimension of illusion, back and forth on the swing, looking at the sunlight through the trees, saw starlight from then till now. But when was now? Time did not exist now. He could see the barrier between the dying star and the new one, the doorway from death to life, from the end to the beginning, and it was a shift or transformation every time he passed through it. He was aware that Salena was there too, but they were experiencing it separately in their own reality. The consciousness of each one who had been transformed and transferred to this timeless realm was felt and recognized as faces fading in and out of view. It was their faces as they remembered them from the former existence at first, then as thoughts, ideas, the intangible core energy of their psyche. These may be described as shining gems of various shapes, or colors, patterns, and so forth, qualities unique to each personality. How this had happened to these observers was now fully known to them. To explain briefly and simply, they were knocked out of their dimension of space into a transition state, or an in-between place. When the Metanova reached its peak energy, when LA mass exploded and the new star arrived, which was later called LA Mara, it sent out dimensional energy waves which distorted space-time. These waves hit the three ships and caused them to be displaced momentarily. Of course, to the people in those ships, it was no momentary feeling at all. The energy that hit them was generated at the peak energy of the Metanova and went out faster than light in different directions. Their winking out happened at the instant of the change from the old star to the new one. If anyone would have seen the winking out of the ships, it would have appeared to be at the beginning of the Metanova, because of visible light taking several hours to reach the ships. More of what Eldon experienced is as follows. He found himself walking up a long stairway, the top of which he could not even see. Then he realized he had something on his head. It was a tray with a cup of red liquid on it. He was balancing it on his head by holding the edge of it with one hand. In the other hand he was holding a burning candle to light the steps because it was dark most of the time. There were flashes of light that lighted the stairs off and on. During those flashes he could see that the stairs went on indefinitely, up, down, and to the sides. There was no end in sight. It was unknown how long he had been there, or the passage of time between what sounded like crashes. The crashes, he realized, were the trays of others like him, walking upward, trying to balance their trays and dropping them, spilling the liquid. He thought he saw red stains on the steps and wondered if they were from others before him or from times he himself dropped the liquid and had to start over. He knew that he could not reach the top if he spilled what was in the cup, so he continued, step by step. And as he got higher, he could hear better the sound of a chorus of singers, quite beautiful. Somehow he also knew that when he reached the top, that he could drink what was in the cup and he would be refreshed. Another thing he experienced in this timeless place between dimensions was a part of another person's life. He was a young father with his wife and newborn baby son in a dark, dismal place. Because he had no home of his own, he was forced to shelter his family in this below-ground room in a huge metropolitan area. He and his wife called it the dungeon. While he and his family slept at night, trolls who lived upstairs came down into their living area. They took a rare old book of his. They could not read, but wanted to try to get money for it so they could buy drugs. They would do anything to satisfy their enslaving compulsion for an unreality. Eldon knew these were real people, a real time and place, and felt so helpless and vulnerable. He could do nothing for them. He experienced another chapter in their life now. They were living in another place that they called the Little Cold Room. The walls were bright white and frozen, like they were inside a giant ice cube. His wife was trying her best to keep their infant warm by keeping him wrapped and close to her. A friend brought them a small heater. This at least gave them a little warmth in this severe environment. But then the owner of the house knocked on their door. She had black eyes and black teeth and no heart. She had plenty of heat in her part of the house, but disapproved of a heater in the little cold room. She argued with the man and his wife at the door. The wife kicked over the heater in anger while holding her baby. She turned her back on the owner and started to walk away. The owner's eyes suddenly turned fire red, and she tried to jump on the man's wife from behind. The husband blocked her just in time to stop her from doing some kind of bodily harm to his wife and baby. Eldon knew this really happened somewhere. He suspected that it was on the fabled rainbow Earth, and that man was his counterpart in some way. In a way, it was like looking in a mirror that revealed what was inside him. These experiences were part of him and not just from an outside source. The netherworld he was in, this space between dimensions, was drawing and manifesting them in his consciousness. Finally, he saw himself as a tiny worm trying to maneuver in a trunk of a huge tree. This, he knew, represented something in his life, if not his life as a whole. Perhaps it referred to something in his future. Eldon, Salena, and the others that were winked out or were sent to this non-time, non-material place did not know if it was an accident or by design, but they felt the presence of the Celestians. They could see themselves there as they do. Eldon did receive a message or an impact of a sort from them. They basically gave him the impression that they appreciate his work as a sing-sword and to keep searching for the source. The Metanova reached its peak, the new star was born, and eternity had been glimpsed. Still awestruck and trembling, Eldon and Salena switched off their recording instruments now. Being returned to their ship in their dimension at the height of the event was done by the Celestians. Each had gained extra IB insight into themselves and the universe. Their place and purpose in the grand scheme became much more clear by this experience that transcended time and space. What now? They did not talk much on their return to Earth. It was only some weeks later that they were able to talk about the unusual effects, even to each other. Selena's experience was somewhat different than Eldon's. She told him she saw many beautiful things, but by far the most beautiful she has seen is the sunset on the ocean on Earth. I have enjoyed serving as a sing-sword with you, Eldon. I've seen so much, enough for 1,000 lifetimes. It is enough for me. I want to stop and stay on Earth for the remaining of my life. If you want to continue searching, I will understand. Eldon was impressed with her straightforward honesty, but did feel a little disappointed. That sounds like a good decision. I will consider it myself. They sat close. The surf rolled. The stars appeared.